the Evolution Security Podcast.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Evolution Security Podcast. Aaron, how you doing this evening, man?
I am doing pretty good. Just can't help but think about the crazy world that we're living in right now because, there's a bunch of crazy stuff going on today, yesterday. I'm a little nervous opening up my favorite news site because I just know there's going to be something that you would normally think, man, that's unbelievable. But you kind of expect the craziness, But, we would be remiss if we didn't at least comment on this debacle of allowing that this administration allowed $85 billion worth of military equipment to, quote, fall into the wrong hands of our enemy. Do you have anything to comment on that, man?
Oh, absolutely. I find it ironic, as you kind of were alluding to, falling in the wrong hands, which is kind of one of the phrases they use regarding, weapons in the wrong hands in the United States. And, of course, the president comments fairly often about citizens shouldn't need AR-15s, but yet he allowed all those weapons, not just M4s and M16s, but much greater, armored vehicles, MRAPs, armored personnel carriers. All kinds of weaponry. And it's just ironic that, a believer in gun control, allows all those weapons, 85 billion, like you said, to essentially be left. We see footage of the Taliban right after we left going in and inspecting all this equipment. So that's pretty sad to see.
Walking around in our uniforms with those high-tech nods and, of course, showing off their new M16s. It's just unbelievable. It's got to go down in history as one of the worst military blunders ever. But,
Oh, absolutely. And all of it was avoidable.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I was just going to say, in full disclosure, we do know very well that this wasn't just U.S. military weapons that we just up and left. Some of it was supposed to be for the Afghan military.
Yep.
I think, like you said earlier, but.
Well, and the Afghan military wouldn't have collapsed if we had left the support we were providing them on their air power.
Yeah.
We were supporting maintenance of their helicopters and air assets so that they could have overwatch over their troops on the ground. And so, this could have been done very differently. We should have left some residual forces in so that the current mission of the soft community supporting the Afghan military could continue. Just like we were talking about earlier, we still have forces in Korea. We still have forces in Europe, plain and simple. We should not have just left precipitously as we did.
Yeah,
so,
if you want to call this a 20-year war, you've got to call Korea a 60-year war, or, Japan, we have troops in Japan, hey, what's that, about 70 years, 80 years?
Yeah, it's just a different philosophy. Unfortunately, it's going to cost more people's lives in the future. I'm going to have to go back. My son's going to be going back because of it, and yeah.
Well,
tough times.
Man, let's get back to the fun stuff of our amazing experts that we get to have on this show. And on this show, we, of course, have the awesome Spencer Keepers, and this gives us an opportunity to go ahead and announce our new sponsor. which happens to be Keeper's Concealment. Now, they are the original authority on appendix holsters and training in appendix carry. And they also offer high-performance handgun training, and they specialize in concealed carry performance. They're actually also a proud affiliate of CCW Safe, a proven legal service membership company offering dedicated defense if you need them. Now, you can learn about their services at ccwsafe.com/keepers and use the discount code KC10OFF. That's KC10OFF when you sign up. Now, to buy a holster, sign up for a class, inquire about hosting a course, or join CCW Safe, you'll find all the information at keepersconcealment.com.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about having Spencer and his Keeper's Concealment come on board and sponsor us, man. We definitely appreciate his support for sure, and he is doing awesome things in the community, and we're just looking forward to highlighting that more. And I'd like to mention one of our other sponsors, and that is Origin USA, making the best jiu-jitsu gis in the industry. Plain and simple.
That's right.
Made with cotton grown in the United States, woven on their looms, and stitched by American workers. They make awesome supplements as well. I mean, of course, all of us partake in the Jocko Fuel, the Mulk protein, the Joint Warfare, the krill oil. All of those products are top notch, and they will support you for sure. So go ahead and check them out at originusa.com and use EvoSec 10 at checkout for 10% off. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd love to welcome Spencer Keepers of Keeper's Concealment to our show. Great to have you, Spencer. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Great to be on again, man.
Well, last time, unfortunately, I couldn't be on this interview. I was deployed at the time, so it's a delight to actually be able to talk with you. It was also an opportunity sometimes when we're not on the show, we get to listen just simply as a audience member. So I learned a lot. So for those of our audience members that may not know you, go ahead and give us a short bio. We don't have to go into the full story like last episode. We'll go ahead and load that into the show notes so folks can go back. But go ahead and give us a bio, please.
Okay. Really quick. My name's Spencer Keepers. I'm the founder and owner of Keeper's Concealment. I started that company building appendix holsters because I couldn't get gear. Fate just kind of led me down that road. Then I started that because I was a training junkie. Firearms training is something that I had always wanted to do, and just kind of missed it early on in life because life happens. And about 2007, I took my first formal firearms training class beyond like what would be a concealed carry class, right? And just hook, line, and sinker from there. I have spent a lot of time taking classes from a lot of people, hosting a lot of people, and I've gained a depth of knowledge from that, not just firearms related, but combatives and tactics and, carbine, shotgun, handgun, etc. And then I AI'd for my buddy Will Andrews for a number of years, and then, started teaching basic classes, concealed carry classes, and then slowly kind of advanced my way onto the kind of the national scene, teaching classes kind of, countrywide, if you will, and kind of have a reputation, as a good shooter. And that's really what I like to do. I like to take the shooters that are, struggling to be better and give them that information to make them, incredible shooters. So,
Well, Spencer, I'll follow up on that. I know our good friend Mike Brown.
Oh, yes.
And so just to give you, it's kind of fun to talk about folks' exponential progress like you've had. And, I've been training formally since about 1997, I think it was. And and I know you're a way better shooter than me. So it's kind of cool to see how, if a person like yourself can put all of that focus into your training and seek out the right training is to show how well you progressed. I mean, let's face it. Are you still holding the record for Gabe White's turbo pin? You've gotten that twice, correct?
3 times.
Oh, 3. I stand corrected.
And literally, Gabe is going to be here this weekend after next. So we'll see if I can snag my 4th turbo pin.
Oh, that's awesome. You need to report back to us for that. Yeah. And when I came back from my last deployment, Brian and I took a 4-hour private with Gabe because, I knew him from when he came and took ECQC when I hosted it, one of the times I should say. And I'm like,
really?
I'm coming. Yeah. It was cool to have him there. He had a lot of good insight inside of that context. And so anyway, I'm coming back from deployment. I'm like, man, I need a tune-up, bad. I've been dry firing over there, but I'm like, man, what's the best way I can do this? Man, I know Gabe, he's just down the road, in Portland. And he came up like almost, it was the weekend after I'd gotten home. So it was a good way to kick it off.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, so one of the main reasons why we had you on, Spencer, speaking of training, I caught a conversation between you and some other legit shooters, and you guys were talking about the goal of getting a sub-second draw. There's sometimes, I guess there's controversy over it. I've seen a little bit, but sometimes I don't pay attention to that enough. Before we get into that, I would like to tell you of what I've been really working on, and it's been real successful. I've been really keying in on my small of the back draw from my Galco leather holster and getting it right under 3 seconds. It's made me pretty happy. And I've got one of those Galcos with the 45-degree cant in the small of my back. It's perfect.
I'm going to text Mike Brown right now and have him come visit you.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, he could help me get to about 2.5 seconds.
Right.
All right. So the sub-second draw. Let's get into that and get your thoughts on it, buddy.
Okay. So there was some hubbub on the internet about that, and it basically come down to I don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of time chasing what a lot of people call kind of a hat trick. It's a little bit of a parlor trick, if you will, in the sub-second draw. And the thing that, and I've been on a couple podcasts talking about that, and the thing that it really boils down to is they're like, well, it takes all this extra time to get there. Well, it really doesn't, right? It really does not. You need training with somebody that understands how to teach somebody to do that. Okay. And that's not going to be the trainer that has 16 people in every class, probably every weekend, that has a dedicated course of fire, and you're going to shoot exactly 480 rounds during the 2 days that you're there, et cetera. That's probably not the guy you're looking for. The guy you're looking for is going to be a little more fluid in his training curriculum. And one, he's capable of producing that type of speed. All right. And then, once you kind of understand what it takes to do that, it's not like you have to put an exorbitant amount of time to get a sub-second draw. Okay. You really don't. A lot of it comes down to how you actually practice. All right. And the other thing comes into is what defines a sub-second draw, right? So for my definition, it's going to be 3 to 5 yards, and I'm going to put a good hit inside the bottle silhouette of an FBI target. Okay? I'm not talking about I'm going to do a sub-second draw, do a 3 by 5 card at 7 yards, all right? Praise God, I wished I could do that. But that is, the keeper test, which you saw in my class. It's 3 yards from 3 rounds from concealment at 7 yards on a horizontal 3 by 5 card. And if you'd have stuck around for the next day, you would have saw me actually set the record on that of 176.
Nice.
For 3 rounds on a 3 by 5 card from concealment at 7 yards, right? That's
awesome.
I don't care who you are. That is, there's no way right now that I could step out there. If you gave me 10,000 rounds of ammunition and told me to shoot that drill, just that drill, that I could top that. Maybe I could, but that is everything coming together perfectly, right? And
Spencer, if I can interrupt you, I apologize.
Sure.
I mean, so breaking that down, that's got to be sub-quarter splits and a sub-second draw in that.
It was
right at it. I'm sorry.
Right. It was. I want to say it was a 128 or 132 draw. I actually forget. And then some pretty fast splits.
That makes more sense. Getting that card getting that a little bit more time and maybe faster splits makes sense.
Yeah. And and it just all came together for me. But I routinely run that drill sub 2.5 seconds, and I consider that kind of a grandmaster class time frame. Anything sub 2.5 seconds on that drill. But getting back to the sub-second draw, you talked a little pre-show about my tri-practice regimen, right? And I think a lot of people would be shocked. I don't practice every day. I probably should. I don't. But the practice I do is very intense, and it's very short duration. You're talking 2 to 5 minutes, and that's about it. Now, understand that the first draw I do every time is at full speed. I'm going as fast as I possibly can. And if I screw that up, then I do a couple of, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, what I call learning draws, right? Where I slow the process down. I make sure I hit all the index points, the Judy chop, getting both hands together, bringing the gun up to where my eyes are already looking, et cetera, making sure that the dot just appears on the target at that point in time. And then I start to speed that process up. So it's not like I'm taking an exorbitant amount of time to do a sub-second draw. What I'm doing each and every time that I draw the gun in a, in my not my learning phase, but my performance phase, is I'm trying to draw the gun as fast as I can each and every time. And it's not that I'm chasing a sub-second draw. It's that I'm chasing the fastest draw I can do. And that gives me ultimately a sub-second draw. Right? So now, having said that, one of the ways that and I used to do this, and I think it's a good technique to push people, is doing diminishing part times. So I'm going to set my par time on my shot timer for say 1.5 seconds, and then 1.4 and 1.3 and 1.2 and none. And I may get par time down to 0.6, and because you're always going to be a little faster on dry practice than you will be live fire. It's just a mental thing. About 0.3 is about the difference between the two. And so if I can pull off a 0.6 beat to trigger press I know the trigger press went off before the second timer beat came, then I know that I have a pretty good chance of doing that in the field. I saw yet another guy that wrote a deal, about the sub-second draw and how that it's not needed and, all this stuff. And he, his deal was he spent 10 minutes a day doing dry practice. And he was like, well, I'd rather, I'm happy at 1.5 or 1.7, and I'd rather learn how to put a tourniquet on and all this, that's fine. But how many times do you have to put a tourniquet on, and how relevant is one skill versus the other? And then his leading of that, his was a force on force scenario where had the dude had a sub-second draw, he would have won the evolution. And it was, to me, it was just so ironic because he put a video out there that literally reinforces to me I need to be faster to the gun. So, I encourage people to get out there and do that, because there's one of the things that I've learned, and I keep coming back to this. I've done quite a bit of really well scripted force on force training. I've done CQT with Mike Brown. I've done ECQC a few times with Craig Douglas. I've done AMIS, I think 4 or 5 times with Craig, or maybe 6 times with Craig.
Nice. Jealous.
And we haven't been to AMIS yet, so we're jealous.
In all honesty, I think AMIS is more important than ECQC.
Whoa, that's saying a lot, brother.
I think if AMIS had the muck portion of it, I would probably pick it over ECQC for most people.
Well, and for the listeners, we can say what AMIS is. We talk in all these acronyms. It's Arm Movement and Structures.
Yes, please.
And so, yeah, one of these days we were going to make it, and then I believe Eric got deployed again. But that's a story for another day.
It wasn't a deployment. It was a crucial support mission that I got pulled in on, unfortunately.
Either way, the government told you to do something besides AMIS. One thing I'm interested in is, because let me just say this. If you can ever catch Spencer's Shoot Better Mondays, you should on Facebook. Isn't that the name of what you call it? Shoot Better Mondays?
Yes. Yeah, Shooting Better Mondays. Yep.
And watch him present a pistol. Watch him get to the pistol. It's very impressive, very fast. Now, seeing that, it always made me wonder, in your dry practice, do you ever use micro drills, like maybe split the draw into 3 sections and, okay, I'm going to do a par time of 0.3 and get to my gun, 0.3 and keep going? or how do you do that, buddy?
Occasionally I will do that, especially like if I'm switching guns, because here lately I've been running a Smith & Wesson Shield Plus Performance Center. So it's a 4-inch shield, 13+1 with a with a dot on it, and that's kind of been my my kind of primary carry gun as of late, because I had a hip replacement earlier this year and a shoulder surgery and some other stuff, and so I've kind of been off, if you will, recovering from from all that stuff, so if I'm having problems like accessing the gun, right, or if I'm not hitting my Judy chop, which is where my hands meet, I'll just drill that. But for the most part, I drill the gun all the way out. And then one of the things that I do that will probably surprise people is in every dry practice session, I do at least one, if not two or three, draw to like a low ready or a command, where I'm not touching the trigger. I'm not doing any of that. I'm drawing the gun out and issuing a verbal command, because I think I think you need that. You don't need to make the gun go off every single time you draw it.
Well, Spencer, can I comment on that? I think you hit on something that's crucial for our audience members to understand. The difference between pointing a gun at somebody that does not deserve to have a gun pointed at them, and or drawing to a low ready position where that gun is not pointed at them, is the difference between a felony and possibly just getting talked to, or a brandishing charge. And I think if you do not add that to your training, you are risking, you get, folks, especially if they haven't been in any kind of force on force training and have never been pushed to the limit of pressure. Unfortunately, they could wind up going to jail for a while or a long time, just not having that as a portion of their training.
Yeah, 100%. There's some trainers out there that are wildly successful that have very little, if no, force on force background, and they're pushing it just it's how fast, and that in and of itself isn't bad if you have the background and the wherewithal to realize that I may very well have to point my gun at somebody and have no intent to harm them in any way at that point in time. Because there are, and the internet will probably blow up on this, there are people that need a gun pointed at them that don't need to be shot yet.
That is another excellent point, and a nuanced discussion.
It's a not shoot yet problem, right?
Yeah, that's a statement from Craig, stealing that straight from him.
Absolutely.
And I've experienced that. The people that are listening that think, and hopefully, there's very few of them that say, well, if somebody comes to my house, I'm going to shoot them. Well, just because they come into your house doesn't mean they need to be shot. I've had a few instances in this home right here where I'm sitting, come running down the hallway behind me that you can see, a girl that I had no idea who she was. And you know what? She didn't need to be shot just because she was in my house and I didn't know her.
Absolutely not. She
just didn't. And the fact that she just happened to have a half gallon of milk in front of her, and we had just talked to the stepdaughter about grabbing some milk on the way home, gave me a really big clue that, hey, guess what? She doesn't need to be shot. But if that's your end, if that's the only thing that your mind can come up with to solve that problem, you may end up in some really deep kimchi.
Well, and also if it does go to shots fired and you unfortunately take the life of an innocent person just because they were in your home, and there could be whatever articulable circumstances, you have to live with that the rest of your life.
Yeah, 100%.
I would go as far as saying I would rather get shot than shoot or kill the wrong person. I mean, just frankly, I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with that, but
I'm not saying I'm to that point, but I can absolutely positively see it, and I wouldn't chastise that thought or comment at all. Right?
Yeah,
that's an individual thing.
Sure. And even the fact that can someone pull the trigger on someone is an individual thing too. I think maybe where I get that is having my two boys. And that's where it really comes down to what if one of my boys has a friend sneak in the house or something like that. It's just we could go down a rabbit hole on this one subject.
Oh yeah.
And it is amazing how often you see people say that they're in my home, they're getting shot. Yeah. Freaking idiots. Sorry guys, if you think that way, you're an idiot. But you know what? I'm pretty confident our audience, there wouldn't be too many of those guys out there. And if you are, hey, let's get some training, right?
Yeah, 100%. So let's circle back around to the sub-second draw and force-on-force training. So one of the things that force-on-force training has taught me is that there are two draws that work that I see time and time and time again. One of those draws is getting the gun out right freaking now. Now, I'm not saying that has to be sub-second, but I equate speed this way in a fight. Speed is basically like strength or knowledge. I wouldn't want any less of it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I knew I was going to be in a fight in 6 months, right? I would be as strong as I could be, and my jiu-jitsu would be as good as it could be.
Yeah.
Right?
Amen.
Because why would I want less of it? And why would I make a statement that says, well, you don't need that kind of speed just because, some super ninja, SWAT cop didn't need a sub-second draw in the, 35 gunfights that he was in doesn't necessarily mean that you won't need a sub-second draw in the one gunfight you find yourself in.
Well, and Spencer, I think that really kind of points towards, our great friend and mentor, Tom Givens. It's the stakes, not the odds, right? And frankly, there's plenty of statistics, and Tom hits on this too. It's like we do not want to talk about averages. We want to talk about what is the highest probability, but also what are the outliers. And what you're hitting on is an outlier. But what in the world would happen if you didn't have that capability in that outlier? It could cost you your life. And Frank, go ahead.
So the other side of that is when I say there's two draws that work, there's some form of a stealth draw, right? There's some form of feigning compliance, and I've had the good fortune to play a role player in some force-on-force training, and I did that for about, I think, 3 or 4 years at EDP, establishing a dominant paradigm class. And
Spencer, I just have to
ahead.
interject because I actually saw you do a stealth draw in one of the scenarios, and it was talked about in the hot wash. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So if you take out the speed component, if you say, I don't need to be fast, then all you are left with is some form of stealth draw. And I don't want to risk my life to only having one option, really, because anything in between those two will get you shot.
Yeah.
In the vast majority of circumstances that I saw develop in really well scripted, force on force. Now, is that going to equate to the streets? Well, it's as real as we can get it. So, is it going to equate 100% to the street? Of course not. But it's as good of an experience as you can get. So we have to be able to base some real, solid findings on that, and say that, hey, yeah, this is what we found in this force on force evolution, and this is what happens, pretty much in the real world. If it didn't happen that way, you wouldn't have, places like Darcy and the Ohio Training Center and the site and some of these other big, training centers that run force on force scenarios for our elite operators, SWAT and military, with nods and lasers and all that stuff. Those guys wouldn't be doing that if it didn't correlate to the real world.
Very, very good point. Awesome point.
Definitely.
Speaking of training, we're hitting on force on force. We're hitting on typical tactical or firearms training. And one of the things that's just an observance of, I think, I would like to guess all three of us here and a lot of our audience members, is that the training industry and community is continuing to grow, and it's hugely prolific now. And I got a 2-part question. Where do you see the training community heading currently? Good, positive, the right direction? And how does that bode with the millions of new gun owners?
Oh, man. Talk about opening a can of worms.
That was my plan, honestly.
We're here to talk, aren't we?
Fair enough. One of the things that I'm seeing, and I'm a little bit, sad about, and and I may actually try and start doing some stuff, is the lack of easy, good force on force training. The problem with force on force training is it is a bear to set up and run well, right? You've got to have role players. You've got to have a scenario. You've got to have you've got to have basically a stage, if you will, where you've got, a store or a countertop or a car, or, all that involved in that, right? And then you really need to have it be, interactive. You need good role players that understand what they're supposed to do and that can actually role play being a bad guy, right? Not, the problem I see with a lot of role players is they revert back to the training that they've had, so they're shooting at you full modern Asaso, all that, instead of, half homie in the gun and stuff like that, right? So I see that as really hard to come by now. And I think that's a shame. I think, but the other thing that I see is um, the 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 average training has probably gotten better as far as like just learning how to go out and use a gun, learning how to draw a gun from concealment, stuff like that. There's a lot of good trainers out there teaching that, and most of the content is, in a lot of ways, it's the same. People are just using different words and different semantics and stuff like that to teach it, right? My class, my AIWB class is different than Scott Jelinski's AIWB class, but they're both excellent classes, having had taken his class, right? And you've got some, they're not perfect, but they're fairly decent beginner type training classes out there. The NRA, the USCCA. There's a lot of ranges out there that are running a lot of those for those new, untold million numbers of new gun owners that we've had. And what I think as an industry we need to do is not be poo-pooing on, well, that's not that's not as good as training you could get, et cetera. Is that getting these folks into some training and then encourage them to continue the training path, right? So, that's
good.
That's one of the main things that we need to be doing, is not being, not being decisive in the industry, right? And it seems like this sub-second draw stroke, everybody's like, the difference between the application side of the house and the decision-making side of the house, right? A lot of the decision makers that are guys that have to make real critical decisions with the gun in their hand are saying, I don't need a sub-second draw stroke. But there is a point that they may need a sub-second draw stroke. But the technical side of the guys are saying, well, a sub-second draw stroke is easy, but they don't have the background in making the decisions in a real world force on force type environment. So we need to not be decisive. We need to be inclusive and not be talking past one another, but talking to one another to try and build a better Second Amendment community across the board.
I love hearing that from you, Spencer, because you're a great teacher. You've taken courses. I've been at some of the classes you've taken. I've taken a course from you. You've been under the legit stuff. So it's cool hearing you say that. And I'll be flat honest. I took a class a couple of years ago from a local outfit. And I'll tell you, there was some great stuff that they had to offer.
Right.
But some of it was BS. And what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to confess the way you said that made me kind of take back, thinking, maybe, and I'm not sitting there going online and bashing these guys or bashing them to other people, but I always have a memory of that class going, man, okay, I took this good from it, I took this good from it, but to be frank, a lot of it wasn't any good. But they still are training some people, and they've got a pretty good, following, and they'll put, 10, 15 people in a class at the local level, So in other words, I'm agreeing with you. That's a good thing. And I don't need to be so judgmental because these guys aren't teaching the exact same kind of material as Tom Givens and et cetera, that, who I kind of hold as the standard for teaching civilians.
Well, Aaron, I'd also like to follow up on that. That was a great response, Spencer, in the sense that we do need to accept that there are a ton of trainers out there that are offering mediocre, sometimes not the best training, but it's training, and it's getting, especially some of these new shooters, into some form of training. Because, as Second Amendment supporters, we are not interested in forcing anybody to take training to exercise their rights.
Correct.
On the flip side of that, it's kind of like those that are on the left, they're anti-gun. How interesting that they're not for having public service announcements about getting training, are they? Because they're not interested in facilitating what they call a gun culture, and which we know is just because they want the Second Amendment abolished. But not to get political, we don't mind doing that, but that's not the discussion here. I think the main point that you hit on, it's like we absolutely need to continue in the training community, and obviously EvoSec ourselves, we're not near to your guys' level. That's something that we do more on the local level. My frustration that I have is it's like trying to get people to take our combatives course is on the lower end. But again, I think it depends on who you're working with. But the bottom line is that getting people convinced that they need to train and force on force, anecdotally, seems to be getting a little easier. But at the same time, I think that's just kind of, convincing people and letting them see the reality. And I think that's the uphill battle we have. Is it's like, everybody loves shooting targets, and it's fun. It's a blast. Right. But when we know ultimately what they need more than anything else, they need a requisite level of shooting capabilities, and they need a lot of force on force and decision making. They need emotional control, all of that's so much more crucial than just the shooting skills. Am I wrong in that?
No, and it's one thing that, it's just, we're hobbyists at this in a lot of ways, right? This is what we do. Okay. But you take, you're right. But you
Because
take,
for
instance, my old physical therapist, soccer mom, it took me, I don't know, it took me 10 years to get her to come to a concealed carry class. And then, once she did that, because, she was, I swear to God, she was at soccer every weekend somewhere. Her kids, of course, they're, now gone through college and got a full ride because they are soccer stars now, and all that, and but that's and that's awesome. But that that was her life. Her life didn't involve around, well, I see that there's an evil world out there, and I'm going to do the most I can to protect myself and my family. It's hey, I got a gun in my purse. I'm gonna check that off my list and go on. Those are the people that we need to get at least a little bit of training to, and we can't, like we were talking about, your local guy, and I've got a local guy down here, that just drives me batty. But he fills classes and teaches people, weekly. And while I would love to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, and what you're teaching isn't correct and all that, he's at least giving them something more than just a concealed carry class. And I don't want to I don't want to discredit them. I don't want to discredit those, those more entry level classes and instructors, because, they may be the guy that gets, the next whoever, hooked on training and allows them to get more training and more training,
That's what I was going to say is these trainers can give people a taste of training, and all of a sudden they realize, you know what, this is fun. And even though this is something that could save my life someday, it can also be a hobby, like you said. We are all three of us are in the shooting and training industry, and educational especially is a lot of our main focus, right, with this show. And we promote high quality training on here. That's another thing that we do. But let's say that, out of those 10 people, 1 to 2 people get a taste of training, and then they start taking one class a year from a great instructor. Hey, they've gone real far because they took that one local
Well, and
class.
Spencer,
So
I
that's
really
cool.
want to make this point and want to know your opinion on this as well. So, and this is going to be the second time I've mentioned this on the air without validating the source, and I believe it was Claude Werner that posted a ebook, and it's like 10, 12 pages long, on simulation. And simply put, the main premise of this book was enforcing the importance, the crucialness of force on force. However, looking at how difficult, what you mentioned, it is to implement a class with, say, simunitions or UTM, because we know the other element that we really have to mention is people can't just willy-nilly do force on force with simunitions or UTM, because there is an inherent major danger in that. People are shot every year from not properly having the proper safety protocols. That said, the people that are trained and will understand how to implement those classes is one thing. However, this is me asking your thought on this. The book talked about enforcing or trying to push more blue gun type scenario or simulation, and so I want to be clear. I want to digress 1 second. I think that people have to take training where there's that pain penalty and ramping up that pressure to that point. But there's the other side of me that every single time when I used to teach our CQS class in Washington State for about 3 years, we did everything with blue guns. And it was that everything, I just like, man, every single time we would do a scenario, it's like, this is 80, 90% of the real benefit of force on force. And I just wanted to know, without bloviating much more, is maybe that's what we need to push in the community more is, hey, if you don't have the capabilities to do UTM or simunitions, make sure you're plugging in the blue gun under pressure. Your thoughts?
I think that's outstanding, actually. If we were honest and somebody come to me today and said, the world is a dangerous place, what is the most important thing that I need to do? The thing that I would tell them is have really good awareness and verbal skills, right? So
Most
I want to
important.
I want to see the problem coming and avoid it, or I want to talk my way out of it, right? You're probably going to use those skills far more than a sub-second draw, far more than, a stealth draw, far more than, pepper spray, anything like that, right? But people we are not wired like that. And I've thought about this maybe as talking as a podcast for a long time, is the progression of mindset. And what I mean by that is the culture that we have says when somebody decides that the world is a dangerous place, they need a gun. And all their friends tell them, well, you need to get a gun. My stepdaughter's husband, got a hold of me here a month ago, and he's like, hey, man, this is what happened, and, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, the first thing you need to do is be aware of what's going on around you. You need to have good verbal skills, and then, we need to get you into a gun. And, but, I don't feel right just saying, hey, here's a gun, go about your, I'm going to make the kid go through some training with me. But a blue gun training scenario is far more than most anybody will ever get. And it goes into a completely different training aspect than, ready up drills. And, okay, we're going to shoot the test. We're going to shoot the FBI qual or, whatever that. And of course that needs to happen. But having some type of force on force training, even as benign as blue gun training is, will give the people, like you said, roughly about 80% of, what the real world might be. So, and if you can give them just a taste, just a smell of what the problem may really be like, it's like, it's like taking a kid out for his first hunt, and getting his first deer or duck or pheasant or whatever, I mean, it just hook, line, and sinker from there on out, so.
I love when my mind is open to something that I was woefully unaware of. I get a high from that. So, to me, that's also another thing, kind of like it's along the lines of what you're saying, their first hunt, etc. Those experiences are visceral and a lot of the times get someone hooked, whether they do it every weekend or once every 6 months, etc. That they are part of a community that wants to have people be safer and enjoy their lives more. You don't always have to think about trying to be able to shoot somebody if they're attacking you. You can just have fun getting better at a martial art, meet people that are fun to hang out with. These people at these training events, there's rarely a guy in these good classes or gal that is a pain in the neck. Because a lot of the time they're just really well adjusted. Man, we could talk about this for a long time. This is a great conversation, but I want to cover a couple of other things before you have to go, Spencer. I want to talk to you about you, number one, moving to the red dot, and the fact that you've moved back to a Glock or back to the polymer pistols. And the first thing that I thought of is I shot one of your Beretta LTTs at your class, and it's like, man,
right.
This is like a freaking Ferrari, and it makes me, I was thinking, man, I wonder if Spencer I'm sure you still have them, but if you missed those, and what was the reason you went to, say, the Glock instead of maybe trying to go with, we had Ernest on a year or so ago, and he's right after that he said he cracked the code to put a dot on a 92. But if you could just expound on that, your journey to getting to that, back to the Glock and to the dot.
Sure. So it's really way simpler than maybe a lot of people, would look at it, because, I've been running the Berettas for several years now, and still enjoy them, don't get me wrong. And I'm actually going to try and do a traditional double action, single action class here soon. But what it came down to was after my hip replacement, I had a major vision shift. And about 2 weeks after the surgery, I thought, well, I need to do a little drive work because I hadn't done any. And I've had excellent vision all my life, 2013 vision, etc. And I drew the gun, and I'm not saying I couldn't see the sights, but I couldn't guarantee you head box hits at 7 yards. Okay, so that's huge.
Wow.
I mean, a huge change, right? And so there's a little local club that I go to, and had a member there that mentally ill dude. Basically, he threatened some members. Actually, it was a sincere threat. He was outside of a dude's house with a gun. Cops were called. The dude was arrested and then let go. And then, he made some other threats. And so, the members were kind of looking at me like going, "Oh, hey, you going to be here?" And so
they want the phalanx.
So literally the next day from that dry practice session, I called like 17 gun shops. I finally found a Glock 17 MOS and went and got a dot put on it, sighted it in, and started carrying it. And and that's kind of why. Since then, my vision has came back. I could shoot the Berettas if I wanted to, but it's kind of one of those deals now that I'm not a big fan of the way they're mounting the dot on the 92s. And so,
I figured that. Yeah.
And so, and the Glock is just, it just is what it is. It's so prevalent and popular and, this, that, and the other that, it's just easy for me to go to that. I'm actually really kind of looking at this new Walther PDP as maybe like being my kind of, toy gun almost, if you will, but
Scott Jedlinski, where he had some input into that. Is that the one you're talking about? Yep. Okay.
Yep. I've got one and got a dot on it, and I've got a trigger ordered for it. So that's kind of what I'm waiting on there. But I really, really like it. But it was more out of a need of necessity than anything. And, the Glock was the simplest, fastest way that I could get into a dot where I thought I could, with the vision shift, that I could still shoot at my level. Right. So that's kind of why I went there. So, and they're easy, I know how to work on them. I know how to do trigger jobs on them. And, I know, I've got all the stuff to do sights, and, I've just got all the stuff, to maintenance the gun, to customize the gun, to all that, so.
Well, Spencer, I am waiting on my slide. I sent off my Gen 519, slide to JagerWorks, and I'm anxiously awaiting. It's milled for a 507C, and I can't wait for it because I know Aaron, his experience with red dots, and frankly, the discussion really boils down to vision. The audience members may know this. I think I might have mentioned a couple of times. I was diagnosed with keratoconus well before I joined the Army, and it didn't really affect my vision until the tail end of my career, and it was mainly only in my left eye. Well, it moved into my right eye, And I had 2 surgeries to help arrest that, but I still have a bad astigmatism that I think the dot is going to be a benefit to me. I'll tell you where I noticed it most was my 25 yards or so shooting that I used to be able to, shoot extremely well at that distance. And man, all of a sudden I'm like, why in the hell am I not passing this standard? And I actually shoot better now. But then it's that 25 yards that just really suffered, and then other areas started to suffer. So I say that all to say this: it's like, man, I'm really looking forward to that, because it is a new tool that seems to be a direction that's good for the industry. Over.
Yeah, and that's another reason that like I haven't just converted right back to my Berettas is I really actually like the dot. I'm running, it's a Glock 17 Gen 5 with a 509T. I really enjoy this dot a lot. I've got another one that I've got the guys are actually building me a holster, but it's got the KKM comp on it. So I'm going to play with that, a dot and a comp. But I really enjoy the dot because it's just like cheating. It's just so easy to, put the dot on something and press the trigger. It's pretty wild. So
it does feel like that. When you're talking about cheating, it does. And my wife, she shot mine and she's, oh, I need one of those. So my wife got a 48, Glock 48, and she's got we had her slide milled for a Holosun 507K,
right.
The smaller one. But for me, I can guarantee that my shooting nearly immediately, I got 30% better. And when I'm repeating something I've said before, but I've shot 3 IDPA matches with a dot. The first time, it was the best match I've ever shot. It was a Vortex dot that ended up being, to be honest, kind of junky. I had to send it back because it wasn't holding 0. And in that time, I ordered a 507C Holosun. I got it on a Thursday, put it on. I zeroed it Friday, and then on Saturday shot again the best match I've ever shot. 2 weeks ago,
nice.
I shot again. Best match I've ever shot. It's really, especially, again, we don't want to go too far into this again, but yeah, getting out further distances, it's not as much help, although it is help. But I was just interested to see your feelings, and I got a good bead on what you felt about the Glocks and then that PDP. We're bought into the Glock thing, but it's just because it's what we've always used. There are a lot of great pistols out there. There's a lot of great striker fire pistols. Man, when you shoot a CZ75 for the first time, holy cow, just great pistols, and then the Beretta. But so, and of course, everybody knows, not everybody, but when they start getting into the dot, they start hearing okay, you need to change how you look at it. You need to target focus now. It's different than irons. Okay, so I'm bringing up another subject that could be controversial, but, we talked about this again with Scott Jedlinski on his episode, and we talked to Craig about it on his episode, that it's possible we've been teaching people too much reliance, or maybe we should have been teaching them all along target focus with irons. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Because, again, in the class that I took from you, you started touching on that. I think you went back about 20 yards or so, and you said, are you saying, people say I can't do target focus back here. I'm going to show you target focus. And and you nailed the shot.
I think.
So what are your thoughts on that, buddy?
Man, I think if you're an instructor and you're not giving your students an alternative focus technique, especially on irons, because, with a dot, you're target focused the entire time, right? But with irons, you can really float your focus from the target to the front sight, and maybe even in between. I've done that, and target focus isn't that big of a thing once you understand that you still see the sights, you can still align the sights. It's just that you're not focused on the sights, right? And truth be told, in a lot of my force on force scenarios, of course, I was using irons in every one of them. I was target focused, but that didn't mean that I wasn't looking at my sights.
Yeah.
Right. I use the terms I'm looking through my sights, not at my sights. Right. So I can very easily look straight
excellent.
and focus hard on the target, look through my irons, align them where they need to be, and make outstanding shots doing that. And that actually accomplishes a couple things. One, it's a little faster because I'm not having to draw my eyes from the target to my front sight, right? Two, it actually, for a lot of people, reduces stress. And they tend to shoot better on a target focused with a soft focus on the sights, right? Looking through the sights, than having that hard focus on the front sight that starts to ramp up their anxiety, and then that comes out in their trigger control. I've seen it time and time again.
Outstanding teaching point right there. What you just said, Spencer, is how do we reduce the stress and the anxiety that goes, okay, my sights are aligned. Okay, press the trigger now.
Right.
And if having a target focused, or maybe even just a less of a focus, and trying to see through your sights just a little more, that can reduce that. And I am going to use myself as an example for a split second, because after we had these discussions in recent time, and even back in the day when, again, we mentioned our good friend Mike Brown, and my primary work with him many years ago, I don't think we really talked about a target focus, but more of a very coarse sight picture back at that time. And that may have been the way that Mike articulated it back then. But I started revisiting that again in the last couple of weeks. And I will tell you that yesterday, when I was shooting at 25, that I purposely tried to look through my sights and have as much of a target focus as I could have. And I'm telling you, my 25 yards was the best it's been in some time. And so I think it's important that I sit there and think, the way that I teach people to focus on the front sight, now I think about it as like, I'm going to explain, this is our preliminary discussion. I want you to focus on the front sight at first. But then, like Cecil's brilliant way of closing in on the way the clinch works at the end. Okay, we're going to show these disparate techniques.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to give you these principles and this mental cue. And then everybody was wrestling like they've been wrestling for a long time. And I think that's the way to think of it. And I think that's the way I'm going to approach helping our clients with shooting, is like, okay, this is the way we're going to focus on it for preliminary, but then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you the going to give you the permission to not focus so much, at least as a start. It's like we don't necessarily have to focus on the front sight and then try to maybe come up with another way of explaining that. Because I do think that we are not giving the best solution for students if we're saying, oh, front sight focus. You know, I that's just my thought, and that's been even in just the last few days, Spencer.
Yeah.
My wife got the dot because she still had so much trepidation of irons. And, you know, it's hard for me to grasp or understand, get myself in those shoes to be, nervous about trying to get sights aligned. But, you know, when people aren't used to it, they're confused, you know, and my wife was an example. And that's awesome to, like you guys said, have another option to give them the liberty of trying that for themselves, trying both ways.
You know that.
Go ahead.
Well, just like in general, that it because I think we're kind of touching on a theme here. You know, my philosophy has always been in training and teaching is there's not a way. There are ways, and my job is to show you the ways and let you decide which is right for you. Right.
The Deo of Jeet Kune Do, right?
There's different ways to talk about pressing the trigger. There's different ways to talk about gripping the gun. There's different ways at, viewing the sights. And it doesn't have to be focus on the front sight every single time, grip the pistol side to side and front to back and, prep the trigger to the wall. There's different ways of doing all this stuff. And I think if you're an instructor and you're not giving your student options, you're cutting them short.
Mic drop right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there it goes.
Well, not going to allow him to drop the mic just yet. But so I think we've got a little bit of time here. It might be abbreviated this time around, but let me just first say that when Spencer's AIWB class is available near you, you got to take it. And if one of the best parts, again, and I think, Spencer, it's probably the muck of your class. It's the equation of carrying Appendix. And, I would at least just touch on it a little bit because I think we can't do it justice in the little bit of time that we have, but I wanted to touch on it, and then I wanted to at least give some feedback on what I've carried away from that.
So what I'm talking about for the listeners is what I try and talk about is the equation of Appendix is all the elements that can go into whether Appendix works for them or not, right? And there's a lot of elements. For instance, there is ride height of the holster. There's cant of the holster. There's position o'clock on the belt of the holsters. There's pant waist height. There's pant fit. There's shirt fit. There's belt tension. There's a whole bunch of things that go into making Appendix work for an individual because, everybody's built on an oval, and that oval is different for everyone. And then you start talking, different body types, things like that. And it can get very complex for some people, and it can be very easy for some people. For some people, you order a holster, you put it on, and, say you ordered one of our keepers for a Glock 17, and we set the belt loop where we just kind of where we think it needs to be, pretty close. And, and you get it and you put it on and boom, you're done. It works. It works perfect. And then, the next guy comes around, he may need to adjust that some to get the right height and the cant just the way, he wants it, and that works. And then the next guy may have to, for instance, when I decided to try and make Appendix work for me, the first thing I had to do was buy higher waisted pants. Right. So, that was part of my equation. And then I actually had to figure out that I needed a holster that was longer than the gun that I was carrying, which is really, for a lot of people, very, like a paradigm shift for them, because so many people think, well, I need a small gun to conceal it. Well, in a lot of ways, a smaller gun is actually harder to conceal Appendix than a larger gun is.
Agreed.
So, and there's a lot to go into that. The more holster or gun below the belt line, the more leverage you have against the top of the gun, the more the force is spread out over a larger area, thus making it more comfortable to carry, et cetera. There's a lot that can go into that. And as you know, that's about a 2-hour talk in my AIWB class, so we're just scratching the surface on that.
Yeah. Well, and again, it was an amazing lecture on the topic. And, we all know, I mean, of course, you being, I like to consider you, Spencer, the father of the modern, especially the father of the modern Appendix holster. But then taking that further, the father of the modern teaching of that method of carry. Now, but from what I took away is the exact same kind of concept. And I try to tell people it's not that you can buy whatever holster that says it goes well in AIWB and IWB, and you just put it where you want, and it's one of those holster companies that shows up in your feed on Facebook. It looks good, and they sell 400,000 of them a year. You can't just grab one of those. I always say, almost everything that's good, you got to order. You cannot go into a store, I'm sorry, and buy proper stuff to carry, in my opinion and my experience, to carry Appendix comfortably, conceal properly. And again, a lot of what people are concerned about is the comfort. Right. And to me, several things made the comfort way better. You said the longer holster. It's counterintuitive. The longer holster is more comfortable. Yep. But back to, of course, the holster is the foundation, and it must have camming features that you had brought to the fore. The lateral camming, the foam wedge, vertical camming, those are a must in my opinion. Yes. And of course, a quality belt that has some flex in it, but also tightens that gun up against your body. And then the other thing is your encouragement to have like an Under Armour shirt on is amazing. Instead of that gun gripping into your skin, it slides against that slick yep. shirt. That's freaking key. And I took that a step further, and I wear Under Armour longer underwear. Same concept. It doesn't grab my leg. It slides off of there. Way more comfortable. So you gotta commit to changing a few things in your life. And some people don't want to do that. But it's really a few simple things like that. Proper holster, proper belt, the adjustments like you mentioned, proper clothing. And man, in my opinion, the undershirt and the good underwear is key too. But I just wanted to say that I got all of that from that class.
Yeah. The little things like that can make a huge difference. And let me be kind of clear on kind of what we're talking about here too. Is we're not talking about just having a gun on, because there's a ton of holsters out there that you can buy that just allows you to carry a gun. What we're talking about is the ability to carry a gun discreetly concealed, but yet have, sub-second access to that gun. And that's where you really start, where the rubber really starts to meet the road, is there are certain things that holster has to have to allow that to happen. And the difference between that and just having a holster with the gun on is night and day. I mean, it's huge. And most people don't really understand the complexities of that and the nuances of that. And they don't get why, our holster costs so much money when another holster costs a third of that. But, they're never going to get, they're never going to get a 2-second draw with that holster, where they easily get a half or a sub-second draw with one of ours set up correctly.
Well, and Spencer, I'm not gonna beat up on some of our folks in the walk, but it is, we cannot, or I'd be remiss, I should say, not mention that, hey, listen, a $20 holster doesn't cut it. It just doesn't. And bottom line is that you need to spend, a third or 20% at least of what you paid for your gun itself. So yeah, I'm probably using the wrong. Let's just put it this way: you need to spend about $80 to $120 on a holster. It just
well,
yeah. Go ahead.
When you think about it this way, is the holster is more important than the gun is.
Absolutely.
The belt is as important as the holster is. I mean, so just pick a gun, Beretta 92, PPS, PDP, Glock 17, Sig Sauer, something, another, whatever, right? Any of us can teach somebody to use that gun well enough to defend themselves, right? But the axe, the accessories to that gun, the holster, the belt, the things that allow you to live with the gun on discreetly and comfortably and have immediate access to it are more important than the gun itself is. But we are a gun society, so we have to start with the gun.
Yep.
So.
Well, and Spencer, to add to what you're saying is, and we probably need to start closing out. I think all of us, this has been an excellent subject, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I think that some people also consider how they carry. It's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. Well, proper equipment is going to make it way more comfortable.
Yes.
And we always like to say, and this is, Tom Givens, who give credit to him and many of our other mentors, is that it's not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be comforting. And if you were, the 1 in 4 chance that you're going to be in a violent encounter, the most important factor in you surviving that, if you need a gun, is that you have it on you.
Correct.
And if you don't have the proper gear to support you wearing it 100% of the time, where it's 100% legal, then that likelihood of you not carrying it when you actually needed it is not a good thing. Because a lot of people leave their pistol at home because it's uncomfortable and they don't have the right gear. So you just like you said, the most important factor is having it on you. So, yeah, excellent subject, Spencer. Man, I definitely have enjoyed this for sure. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a good time.
Oh yeah. Now let's have one more fun question. and then we'll let you go here. Spencer, we like to bring out stuff that are not usually on these tactical shows. So I always love seeing pictures on social media of your dog. And, if you feel comfortable disclosing your dog's name on the air, I know we like to protect our children, from the world, but, tell everybody about your dog real quick, because he or she, I'm not sure. They're awesome.
It's a he. His name's Cooper, and he is named. We have three dogs. There's Remy and Gunny and Cooper. They're all gun themed. Cooper is actually named after the Cooper Rifle Company.
Nice.
Because of the color of their stocks and the color of his fur matches quite well. What happened with Cooper was last year, my wife saw him on some picture on Facebook, and she got to dealing with this lady that was just absolutely crazy. I won't get too far into that, but she finally convinced this lady, because this dog was had parvo, it was just skin and bones, and just, it was in just a lot of distress. And so she finally convinced this lady to take it to a vet that we use, Neil's Vet here in Oklahoma City, and sign the dog over to her. So that transpired without my knowledge. So she thought really what was going to happen is they were just going to end up euthanizing the dog. Well, he spent about a week and a half there at the vet, and about a day before, he was going to come home, she was like, she pulled Ottoman up and sat in front of me, and she's like, "We need to talk." And I'm like, "Oh, great. We're getting a divorce," and so she tells me about this, and I'm like, okay, we spent a bunch of money on him and all that. And she actually put up a little page and got some people help, which we greatly appreciated. But anyhow, so it was a Friday. We brought him home, and again, he was he looked horrible. You could see every rib in him, all his bones. He was just, well, it just so happened that, COVID was, in its big ramp up, and it was the first time ever that I had a 3-week stint of working from home doing online training classes. And so, in the morning I'd get up and get on my computer, and he would crawl up in my lap and just fall asleep. And so there was, 3 weeks of bonding right there that, made him and me pretty inseparable, and Cooper's a little pitty, and he's 67 pounds of just absolute cuddle bug love. And
awesome.
He's such a great little dog, and that's not to diminish my dog, Gunny, who's a full blood chocolate lab. He's a full high speed, true blood lab, and then Remy he's another rescue. Actually, all three of them are kind of rescues. Remy is half lab, half Great Dane. So,
well, Spencer,
wow.
it's clear that you love your dogs. We admire that on your social media. I love my dog. Shout out to Brody. He is most assuredly one of the most important things in my life. Our son is a Marine. You may know this. He's out of the house, but he's only 2 hours from here. But it's interesting when you have an empty nest, how your dogs really do become your kids. And so, yeah, it's awesome. I can tell the way you described it, you absolutely love your dogs.
Oh yeah. I had I don't know if you saw the post yesterday. I went for a walk and had a damn horsefly.
Yep,
trying
I saw it.
Bite Cooper. And I was actually surprised at myself at the just outright rage that I had when that fly landed on my dog. I mean, I snatched that fly out of the air, which surprised even me, right? I know I have fast reflexes, but and killed it. And I was just like, how dare you try and bite my dog?
Yep. That's
It
awesome.
was pretty funny.
Spencer, you should have shot it.
I thought of that in the park. There was actually about a half second because I guess it's been about 2 years ago. I was at the range and there was a wasp flying behind the targets, and I shot the thing out of the air with my Beretta 92. And I had a witness that saw this, So there was that little bit
Not
of
surprised.
a little bit of, if I can't catch you, I can shoot you.
That's awesome. Well, Spencer, before we go, first off, tell our audience how they can find you, and also tell us a little bit about CCW Safe.
So to find out about me and what's going on, you can get really to everything at keepersconcealment.com. Our holsters are there. My training class, a couple of are there. The link to sign up with CCW Safe is there. CCW Safe is a legal member services, basically roughly defined, as an insurance would be the closest way. But the thing that I'm so adamant about that is if you carry a gun or any legal weapon, because that's what they cover, you need legal coverage in this day and time. They're one of the only companies that have successfully defended a member on a murder one charge. And you can find out about that on CCW Safe, the Stephen Maddox trial, and his story. But that cost about, I want to say it was about $340,000.
Wow.
To defend him. And even if you have that kind of money laying around that you could spend on that, it's not a wise financial decision. And the cool part about it is if you'll use code KC10 off, you'll get 10% off when you sign up, and that does help my ammo budget a little bit. So
there you go.
I greatly appreciate that. So.
Yeah, it is a must, Spencer. I can't agree more. I mean, there's no reason to go into the poorhouse to again use Tom's phrase that you shouldn't have to do that. So right. Excellent. And I'd like to add, I should have said this earlier, regarding the foursome force, I will revalidate the source of that pamphlet and or small book, and I will have that simulation or foursome force book in the show notes, because I think as far as our discussion, how important that is, I'm going to start pushing that out there. So
excellent.
I'll make sure I do that.
Excellent.
So, well, with that said, Spencer, man, outstanding time, brother. Thank you so much, and we would love to have you back on. And not only that, I need to have you out here in North Carolina for one of your classes, because Aaron's taken your class. I haven't been able to do so, so I just need to host you out here.
That'd be great. I'd love to come to North Carolina. I have not taught there yet, and have some friends out there, so that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll make that happen, Spencer.
Well, and I'll of course come out for that too. That'd be a blast.
That'd be good.
Cool. Well, I bid you guys good night. Spencer, take care. Aaron, you have a good one too, brother.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You guys too.
Bye.
Well, Eric, it is that time again. It is time for accountability, which is actually a blast for us to do. We hope that you listeners get some fun out of it and get some encouragement out of it too. So, Eric, I'm going to start in here and I'm going to just lay it out there. Frankly, last week I was kind of lazy. I had several times where I needed to hit jiu-jitsu and I came up with an excuse several times to not go. And I kept putting it off because I had a gig last weekend, and people have to know sometimes I'm transcribing music over the period of hours, and I have to memorize it in time to perform over the weekend. So it's actually a bit of work and sometimes a little bit stressful, but so I kept needing to practice and kind of put it off and said, I'll at least go on Saturday. And then I made another excuse. So I'm a little bit embarrassed about that, but hey, I am going to jiu-jitsu right after this, so at least I can say that. Now, on exercise, I didn't do a whole lot either. I got a couple of decent walks in with my wife, but that is it. Now, for dry fire, I did get 3 shorter dry fire sessions in, and I was working mainly on my full draw and reloads because when I've been shooting lately, those have been a little shaky. So, but speaking of shooting, I did hit the range last Friday night after work, which I think maybe we've talked about it, but I have my range is a mile away from my office, so it's real nice to pack my gear up and head over there after work. So I went there and worked on a few things, some strong hand only shooting, some support hand only shooting, and then I did some 25-yard work, and then I finalized the time with kind of a mashup of several skill drills, kind of like the FBI qual, and kind of a mix in with some of Carl Wren's really cool core skills tests. But I ended up making a 96% on that drill and I had 4 slightly out of the 10-inch circle. And by the way, I was using the Range Master target that a lot of people are familiar with.
Love that target, similar. Man.
Yeah, it's great. Target. But I had 4 shots just slightly out of the 10-inch circle. I had 2 slightly out of the 8-inch, and then my head shots were real nice and clean. So again, made that at 96%, which I was pretty happy about.
Oh yeah, I saw it, man. Good shooting, brother.
Thank you. Well, one last thing before I give it on to you, Eric. I did go yesterday to have a consultation about getting my eyes fixed. I've talked about it a couple of times. I've got early onset cataracts and went and saw the eye doctor a few weeks ago to get new glasses, and they told me, hey, we can't really help your vision, but a minuscule amount with glasses. Your vision issues are from your cataracts, so you need to get them fixed sooner than later. So I went ahead and had that consultation yesterday and set my surgery up for this November, and I'm pretty dang excited about it because the doctor said that more than likely my vision will be fixed for the rest of my life.
Awesome.
Yeah, no more, the possibility of grabbing glasses if the worst night comes, and somebody kicks in the door. I don't want to be rushing around getting glasses. I've often thought about that, but I'm going to be good to go, and I'm going to bet that I'm going to jump up in my shooting a little more. So,
well, Aaron, just to stop you there a second. So this surgery will correct your overall vision to include not having to use glasses?
Yeah, actually, it will. Interesting enough, so she went over some options with me, and funny, I told her that I was a shooting instructor and a competitive shooter, and she went straight into the option that she felt best for pistol shooters.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was pretty cool. And she even stuck her hands out and kind of like she was, she had an isosceles stance and was saying, yeah, your vision is going to be real clear right about where your sights will be. Now,
Man, that's awesome.
but she said from
some.
that point in, she said that my vision will be a little bit blurry, that I probably will need glasses for work. But other than that, man, I mean, everything else, driving, shooting, jiu-jitsu, I always have to take my glasses off in the middle of jiu-jitsu. It's pretty annoying. So, man, yeah, I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, I remember when we were training in Cecil's seminar, I felt bad for you because you needed your glasses to see what was going on, and we started a drill, and you have to take them off. So, man, I'm glad for you that you're gonna get some progress there. That's great.
Yeah, I'll look forward to a good report on the show about that when that happens.
Well, man, I guess that brings me into accountability. I'm going to kind of keep this short because this is kind of a longer show. So I'm going to just hit the highlights. Because of a work trip, I have also been down on jiu-jitsu, only one jiu-jitsu workout in the last week. So that's the way my life is sometimes. Now, I definitely got my video review in and notes. I've been consolidating my notes, which for those out there serious about jiu-jitsu realizes that, sometimes our notes are some of our best tools to keep us on the right track. I had 3 morning workouts. I'm still on a cardio cycle. I think I had to look back at my notes. I think I've only got 1 more week of this cardio cycle, but I had mainly kettlebells in my cardio workouts this week with just a little mixture of cardio machines. And so I'm kind of starting to gear back towards my my strength cycle. And so I had a good squat workout for my strength workout, and actually went heavier than I normally have been. And for the audience members out there, my goal right now is to keep my back healthy so that I can get my purple belt eventually, whenever that may happen. It's going to happen when I'm at that level. But I'm minimizing injuries, and so I haven't been lifting heavy like I normally do, but I lifted quite a bit more heavy this week because I felt good. So as far as dry fire, just breeze over that. I had 5 dry fire sessions. I've been focusing on my new dot. So that's kind of a cool part of my accountability this week is that my slide came in from JagerWorks, and so I've been focusing on getting used to the dot and kind of changing a little bit, of how the end of my draw stroke with that, with my front sight pointed a little higher on the, if you want to call it something, maybe it's like kind of fishing a little bit, but that's kind of important. Just slightly. You probably won't even notice it if you're seeing it at speed. But getting used to that, and I had a live fire session with that red dot, and man, I'm super pumped. I know it's going to help improve my shooting. Again, I have vision issues too, and keratoconus. I've had 2 surgeries for that, and this stigmatism that still is there. This dot, I think, is going to really help with that. So, pretty pumped about that.
Me too.
So one of the coolest accountabilities of this week was Nick, my son. He and I taught our 8-hour defensive pistol course that we've kind of revamped, and man, it went awesome. And I'll say part of the coolest parts of the class was how awesome Nick did. And I knew he was going to bring it. For the audience out there, he's also a Marine Corps firearms instructor as well. He's new to it, but he is raised around the platform that we espouse in EvoSec, and so I knew he would be a great partner in helping helping me teach the classes here in North Carolina, and he delivered big time.
Hey, bro, let me interject before you finish that. It's real funny. I'm sorry. I always get a chuckle out of it when I get to train with Nick and see how well he does. And I always go, man, you can tell he's Eric's son. Grew up in it all.
Yeah, he's definitely been engrossed. So, and it's funny. I think that sometimes, and it's not because it's me. I want to be careful that it doesn't sound arrogant or anything like that, because I'm not all that. I don't claim that, but I raised him around firearms, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all of it, and he took to it all, and he articulates the techniques so well. Just so proud of him, and we're going to have him on the show and talk about it. Probably, maybe do it in an accountability. But I think he deserves to come on and talk about his experience in teaching his first EvoSec class. So,
man, that'd be
we're going to have to make that happen. So, yeah, it was a good time. I have a few of the clients I might even invite on after that class too. So
that's a good idea.
We'll try to make that happen. And I'll mention one of them here, Mike. I'll just use his first name. So he was a soldier in the Army, but yet he's never fired a pistol in his life. His only firearms experience was in the Army. And
wow.
Let's face it, depending on what your job is, if that's your only experience, it doesn't necessarily translate into being a good shooter. Mediocre, so on and so forth. But if you've never shot a pistol, it's a different world. And man, I'm telling you, I saw him even in just the basic marksmanship portion where, we're shooting the black dots, and he went from having a real tough time keeping his rounds in the black, and his last two iterations, every single round in the black. And I remember him
awesome.
saying, he said, I heard him say online, he's like, man, that last group, it just seemed like it shot itself. And I was like, yep, that's what it should feel like. And so, yeah, and then towards the end when, we're through all the draw stroke development and the more dynamic drills, I mean, he just kicked ass. So, sometimes, a lot of times we see clients come through that have never touched a pistol in their lives, and they end up being some of the top shooters. He wasn't the top shooter, but he was actually second from the top.
Wow! And it was his first.
So.
It was his first time. That's great.
Yep. Yeah. So
let me ask you this: was that the first time he shot a pistol in that class, or he just hadn't shot one in the military and he's just getting into it?
His very first time of having his hands on a pistol was in that class.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and of course we went all the way from, very, very safe development in that 8-hour class to a very, very dry fire intensive class. We don't shoot a whole lot of rounds. It's only about 250 rounds. And by the end of the class, he was shooting from concealment very safely, and so it pretty cool.
That's a great testimony, Eric. Love hearing about that.
Well, brother, I'm gonna call it good, even though I have a few other things to mention. I think that's good for this evening, man. It's been awesome hanging out with you as always.
Oh yeah, but I wish you would shut up so I could go ahead and get ready for jiu-jitsu.
Well, I was just about to say you probably need to get your spats on.
I sure do. Well, great hanging out, brother. Great show with Spencer. Until next time, take it easy.
Take it easy, brother.